Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're about to witness one of the most emotional chapters yet. While visiting his father in the hospital, the young CEO accidentally overhears strangers talking about a happy family that used to visit every single day. A loving woman, a little girl, and a devoted husband. Why do these forgotten memories suddenly make his heart ache? And why is his mother so desperate to keep the truth hidden? As she secretly arranges a new relationship to pull him away from his past, will the CEO uncover the family he has forgotten before it's too late? Stay with us until the very end to find out. And if you love emotional family dramas packed with shocking twists, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next episode. The morning sun slowly bathed the city's largest hospital in a warm golden glow. Luxury cars arrived one after another. Doctors and nurses respectfully stepped aside. The young CEO walked quietly through the main entrance. Although he had already returned to work, there was still one place he visited every week: his father's hospital room. The elderly man remained unconscious. The machines surrounding his bed continued their steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The CEO slowly sat beside him. For a long moment, neither father nor son moved. He gently adjusted the blanket covering his father's chest. "I've gone back to the company." His voice was calm. "The board says everything is getting better." He smiled faintly. "I wish you could open your eyes and see it." Silence answered him. Outside the room, his mother watched quietly through the glass. She felt relieved. At least, her son had returned to the life she had always wanted for him. Or so she believed. Just as the CEO stepped into the hallway, two elderly nurses pushed a medicine cart past him. Neither of them noticed he was standing only a few steps away. One smiled warmly. "It's so quiet now." The other nodded. "I know. I still remember when that young couple came every single day." The CEO instinctively stopped walking. Young couple. The first nurse laughed softly. They always came together. The handsome young man, the sweet village girl, and that adorable little daughter. The CEO suddenly felt his heartbeat quicken. His fingers tightened unconsciously. The second nurse smiled. The little girl always ran into the room. She called him Grandpa, and he always smiled, even though he couldn't speak. The CEO frowned. Grandpa, little girl. For some reason, every word sounded painfully familiar. The first nurse continued. "I've worked here for 30 years. I've never seen a family so devoted. The young woman never missed a single day. She fed him, read stories to him, talked to him like he could hear every word. And that young CEO," she smiled. He looked completely different around them. So relaxed, so happy. The CEO's breathing became heavier. Happy? With whom? Why, couldn't he remember any of this? A sudden flash exploded inside his mind. A little girl's laughter, a woman's gentle voice, someone holding his hand. Then, an unbearable pain shot through his head. He staggered backward. One hand immediately grabbed the wall. The nurses turned around in shock. "Mr. CEO, are you all right?" He didn't answer. His face had gone pale, his vision blurred. The only thing echoing inside his mind was one broken sentence. Every single day. The hallway spun around him. Doctors rushed over immediately. They helped him into a nearby examination room. The neurologist quickly checked his condition. Another memory trigger. He looked toward the chairman. This is exactly what we warned about. His emotional memories are trying to reconnect. If this continues, he may begin remembering people. The CEO slowly opened his eyes. His head still throbbed violently. He looked directly at the doctor. Who were they talking about?" The room fell completely silent. No one answered. His mother stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "They must have mistaken you for another patient." The CEO stared at her. They sounded certain. They said, "There was a little girl." His mother's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to remain calm. Hospitals are full of stories. You shouldn't overthink them. The doctor quietly lowered his eyes. He knew that wasn't the truth, but it wasn't his place to interfere. Later that afternoon, the CEO sat alone inside his office. The city stretched endlessly beyond the glass walls. He wasn't reading reports anymore. Instead, his thoughts kept returning to the nurse's conversation. A young woman, a little girl, visiting his father every day. Why did every word feel so real? Without realizing it, he picked up a blank sheet of paper. His pen slowly moved across the page. He didn't think. He simply wrote, "Ty." The pen stopped. His heartbeat quickened. Why had his hand written those letters? He stared at them for a long time. Then, he crumpled the paper and threw it away. That evening, his mother stood alone inside her private office. For the first time in weeks, she looked genuinely worried. She replayed the doctor's warning again and again. His emotional memories are reconnecting. She knew exactly what that meant. Sooner or later, he would remember Tieu Lac. He would remember his daughter. And when that happened, everything she had tried to protect would collapse. She couldn't allow that. Not yet. She picked up her phone. "I want to arrange a dinner." The person on the other end answered immediately. "With whom, madam?" She looked out the window. "Miss Evelyn, the daughter of Chairman Harrison." The secretary paused. "You mean the overseas investment family?" "Yes. They've admired my son for years. It's time they officially met." The following morning, news spread quickly through the company. "The chairman is hosting a private dinner. Only a few executives are invited. The CEO will attend." No one knew the real purpose behind it. Everyone assumed it was another business meeting. Only his mother understood. She wasn't arranging a partnership. She was arranging a future. If her son became busy again, with new people, new responsibilities, perhaps the past would finally fade away. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Tieu Lac stood outside her small wooden house. The little girl happily chased butterflies across the yard. She suddenly turned around. "Mom, when Daddy visits Grandpa, will Grandpa tell Daddy to come home?" Tieu Lac froze. Her lips trembled. She forced herself to smile. "I hope so." The little girl nodded confidently. "Grandpa always listens to Daddy. And Daddy always listens to Grandpa." Tieu Lac quietly looked toward the distant mountains. If only life was still that simple. If only the man she loved still remembered the family waiting for him, far away in the city. The CEO was unknowingly taking one step closer to the truth, while his mother was already preparing someone new to take Tieu Lac's place. The evening lights of the city slowly illuminated the skyline. Inside one of the most luxurious hotels, everything had already been prepared. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above an elegant dining hall. A private room had been reserved. Only a handful of people had received invitations. The young CEO arrived precisely on time. He adjusted his jacket before entering. As soon as he stepped inside, his mother greeted him with a warm smile. "I'm glad you came." The CEO looked around. Several senior executives, a few important investors, and a young woman he had never met before. She stood gracefully beside the window, dressed in a simple ivory gown. His mother walked toward her. "This is Evelyn, the daughter of Chairman Harrison." The young woman smiled politely. "It's an honor to finally meet you." The CEO returned the greeting. "The pleasure is mine." Everyone took their seats. The conversation quickly turned toward international investments, business expansion, future partnerships. Everything sounded perfectly normal. Yet, the CEO couldn't explain why he felt completely disconnected from the room. Throughout dinner, Evelyn tried to keep the conversation flowing. She was intelligent, confident, well-educated. Everything his mother believed would make the perfect partner. "I've followed your company's growth for years." The CEO smiled politely. "Thank you. I hope we'll have the chance to work together." She laughed softly. "I was hoping you'd say that." Across the table, his mother quietly watched them. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax. Perhaps a new beginning really was possible. Perhaps, if someone kind entered his life now, the memories of Tieu Lac would slowly disappear forever. After dinner, the CEO stepped onto the balcony alone. The cool night breeze brushed against his face. Far below, families walked hand in hand through the city streets. Parents carried sleepy children home. A little girl suddenly wrapped both arms around her father's neck. "Daddy!" Her joyful voice drifted upward. The CEO froze. His heartbeat suddenly became uneven. Once again, a blurry image flashed across his mind, tiny hands reaching toward him, a child's laughter, someone calling, "Daddy!" He immediately grabbed the balcony railing. His breathing became heavier. Another sharp pain exploded inside his head. Behind him, his mother rushed outside. "What's wrong?" He slowly turned toward her. His face had gone completely pale. "Mother, did I ever have a child?" Time seemed to stop. For one terrifying second, she couldn't breathe. The doctors had been right. The memories weren't gone. They were fighting to return. She forced a calm expression. "No. You've always devoted your life to work." The CEO searched her face carefully. "You've never lied to me. Have you?" Her heart trembled, but she smiled gently. "Never." He looked away. Somehow, that answer failed to quiet the emptiness inside him. Late that night, the chairman sat alone in her study. Stacks of business files lay untouched. Her thoughts remained fixed on only one thing: her son. She slowly opened a locked drawer. Inside was an old envelope, photographs she had hidden months ago. The CEO smiling in a strawberry field. Tieu Lac standing beside him. A tiny little girl sitting on his shoulders. All three laughing beneath the afternoon sun. She stared at the photographs with trembling hands. Then, without another glance, she locked the drawer again. "They must stay forgotten," she whispered to herself. "It's the only way to protect him." Yet deep inside, even she no longer believed those words completely. Back in the mountain village, the little girl couldn't sleep. She quietly climbed out of bed, carrying the same faded drawing she had kept for months. She tiptoed toward Tieu Lac. "Mom." Tieu Lac gently opened her eyes. "What is it?" The little girl climbed into her arms. "I dreamed about Daddy." Tieu Lac smiled sadly. "What happened?" He was standing very far away. "I called him, but he couldn't hear me." The room became painfully quiet. The child looked up with innocent eyes. "Mom, did Daddy forget the way home?" Tieu Lac felt her heart shatter. She hugged her daughter tightly. "No. He just needs a little more time." The little girl nodded sleepily. "I'll keep waiting, because Daddy always keeps his promises." Within moments, she fell asleep in her mother's arms. But Tieu Lac remained awake. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Outside, her elderly mother watched through the half-open door. She quietly wiped away her own tears. No mother should ever have to watch her daughter endure this kind of pain. And no child should have to wait every night for a father who didn't know she was waiting. The next morning, The CEO returned to headquarters. As he entered his office, his secretary handed him a neatly organized schedule. "Mr. CEO, you have meetings with Miss Evelyn every afternoon this week." He looked surprised. So many. The chairman personally arranged them. He nodded without another question. His calendar was now completely full. Business lunches, charity events, investment conferences, formal dinners, every hour of every day, carefully planned, carefully occupied, as though someone was determined to leave him no time to think, no time to remember, no time to ask why his heart still ached whenever he heard the laughter of a little girl, but hidden deep inside his soul. The memories of Tieu Lac and their daughter were growing stronger with every passing day, and somewhere, one unexpected encounter was already moving closer. The moment they met again, no lie would ever be strong enough to keep the truth buried. While visiting his unconscious father in the hospital, the young CEO accidentally overhears nurses talking about a loving woman and a little girl who once visited with him every day. Their words trigger painful flashes of forgotten memories, leaving him confused and desperate for answers. His mother realizes that Tieu Lac and their daughter are slowly returning to his mind, and she becomes increasingly afraid that the truth will soon be uncovered. To distract him, she secretly arranges meetings with Evelyn, the daughter of a powerful businessman, hoping a new relationship will erase the past. Meanwhile, Tieu Lac remains far away in the village, comforting their daughter, who still believes her father will come home. But the CEO's buried emotions are growing stronger, and every child's laughter brings him closer to remembering the family he once loved deeply.